Mhm.
Hey Pat, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself from like what got you in the cars? Let's start there.
My brother Mike was in the cars a little bit and showed me a little bit about engines, and I always seemed to be interested in mechanics. I built my little mini bike and messed with Briggs and Stratton motors. I actually had a 5-horse Clinton engine when I was about 10 years old, and it was that tall and had a great big cylinder on the head, and I was impressed with size. Size matters. Even if it didn't make a lot of horsepower, it went pop, pop, pop real good. And so I started building stuff, and when it came time to join the Army in 1970, my dad said if I ask for something I want when I'm going in, they might give it to me. So I told them I wanted to be a diesel mechanic, and they sent me to diesel mechanic school. And so for over the last 55 years, I've been a diesel mechanic and a hot rodder. I build a lot of drag racing engines, and I race Top Fuel Harley now and some race cars. I did get my first race car when I got home from the Army. I bought a car from Tom and Dick Smothers in California. I lived up in Seattle. We had to run down and get a 66 GTO with a straight axle, fiberglass doors and trunk and roll cage in it and stuff. So that's how I got started in racing. And I wasn't even 20 years old yet. This story I'm going to tell is about my Harley, riding my Harley in Texas. It's a kind of a rough story. I love big stroker motors, and I always ran shovel heads. My last 10 shovel heads have been over 100 cubic inches. So this was in 1983. I was living in Corpus Christi, Texas, and riding my stroker in the middle of summer. It was over 100 degrees out, around 102 or something. And one thing, and all my bikes have always been kickstart only, so you had to really kick them hard and get them going. And when they got going, they didn't like being shut off and restarted, and especially at a high temperature. So I was looking for a keg party. These guys said there was going to be free beer in this neighborhood, and I was going down the 2-lane street on my bike, and instead of shutting it off, I would leave it running because it was hard to kickstart, and I was only checking certain houses for this keg party. The other thing about my big stroker Harley was it had a 3-inch wide belt drive on the left-hand side connected to the engine and tranny, and didn't have any covers over it. So when I stopped on the bike, I would have to reach with my left hand down below the belt drive and pull the kickstand out and lay the bike over on the kickstand, leave it idling. I always had my idle set up a little high. Well, it went okay for a few houses. I run up and knock on the door, and they'd answer the door, and I'd say, "Is this where the kegger is?" And they'd say, "No, not here." And I was a lot younger and uglier and long hair, all that. They'd send me down the road, and I'd go to a couple houses down, and I'd stop the bike and lean it on a kickstand, running out in the street, go check. Well, plus I'd been drinking all morning and afternoon looking for this kegger. And I pulled up in front of this one house. I go, "I bet this is it." And from sitting on the bike, I reached down to pull out my kickstand, and I heard a chunk. And it was these 3 fingers that aren't straight anymore, went around the front pulley of the engine and yanked me off the Harley and threw me on my back. Then the bike fell on me. And I got my shoulder underneath the bike. I was in a lot of pain. And I've never felt shock before that or since that. But my big, beautiful beer buzz started like this. I just felt it all leaving down below my eyes and down below my neck, and it just went away. And I put my shoulder against the bike and pushed it up and took my right hand and grabbed the clutch hub and started twisting it forward or backwards and rolled my hand out of the belt drive from between the belt pulley and the belt. And my fingers were just hanging there like this backwards, and a bunch of meat. The bones were all broken, hardly any meat left on them. So I jumped I just dropped the bike in the middle of the road, and I wrapped my hand up in my shirt, and I went up and I knocked on the door, and a little old lady answered the door, and I went, ah, ah, ah. She goes, oh, let me see, and she unrolled it, and she goes, oh my, and she went into her bathroom and got a towel, wrapped my hand up, and put me in her car and took me to the hospital. And I left that old shovelhead laying right in the middle of the road. I got to the hospital and got some medicine and called my friends and told them, hey, this is where you can find my bike laying in the middle of the street. And I was in such bad pain that I told this doctor to just cut the fingers off right here. Just nub them off, clean them off. Let's stop this. And the doctor looked at me real close right in the eye and he goes, okay, pay close attention now. Imagine this. And he told me, isn't that your clutch hand? And I said, yeah. And he goes, I can fix that. So from 1983 to this day, I can still squeeze my clutch. And I still have one of those 103-inch shovel heads sitting over there. But I made it electric start because now I'm over 70. And it's tough to kick, especially in the heat.
So, a special thanks to putting that dock back together. How many years ago?
1983, so it's 40, 41?
41 years ago.
41 years ago he did that. Oh, and I quit drinking 37 years ago. A couple other mishaps. But that really helps, riding the Harley too.
What got you to change from running cars to bikes?
Speed. I rode my bike to Sturgis, and I wanted to go to Sturgis. I was real young, still racing a car and stuff, but I went to the drag races there, and I watched an old guy with a long gray ponytail kneeling down beside his nitro bike that I just saw run 7.5 seconds in the quarter at 190 miles an hour. And I went up to that guy, and he was down on me working on it. I said, hey, I only got one question. What does it take to do something like this? And that old guy looked up at me. He didn't stop working on his bike or anything. He just looked up at me and goes, oh, I must have 13,000 in this. And me being a diesel mechanic, a light bulb went off. And I didn't even stay for Sturgis. I went home. And the next year I had my first nitro bike. And the year after that I had my next nitro bike. And so many nitro bikes later. And my current one, my great-grandfather project I'm working on, has 2 engines.
How many years ago was that first nitro bike experience at Sturgis?
Late 70s.
So, well over 45 years ago.
Yeah, I've been building some of the fastest Harleys in the United States for 45 years. Because why not?
Right. Where are all some of the outrageous places you used to work on diesels at? Like, what's your top couple of memories diesel working?
They made me get a passport and sent me to Russia to work in the oil fields and fix diesel engines. I went to Hawaii and they sent me offshore. I worked on large container ship engines. And I've been operating engineers, 40 years. That's a worldwide union for mechanics and welders. And that's what I did was locomotives. I worked on locomotives in South Texas for years. Locomotive engines. I've always worked on very large engines because there weren't many guys that did it. And you don't really have to lift the parts by hand. Use a crane to pull the pistons and rods out, pick the heads off.
Is there anything that you want our viewers to know about you other than what you've already said?
No, I had a dragster hanging from the ceiling right there, and about 3 weeks ago we pulled it down and put a blown 383 small block engine in it. And that is my first blown engine in my life. I've never had a supercharged engine. And we got it running, and I feel pretty happy about that.
So you've ran top fuel, but never had a supercharger on nothing?
Never had a supercharger on anything. All my top fuel stuff was injected nitromethane. Harley motors.
Cool. Pat, As always, thank you so much for your time and your stories.
Yeah, enjoy. Have a good summer.